the Bat!
In an all-new, larger-than-life feature film. Now, the Dark Knight confronts his newest and most menacing villain.
Your angel of death awaits.
The Phantasm.
I want
Hey guys, this is Cash here with another movie review, and I'm going to be reviewing a very special movie that I grew up watching, and a lot of Bat fans I've actually watched and probably still watch it to this very day. I'm talking about Batman Mask of the Phantasm, the animated movie that came out in 1990. So basically, Batman the Caped Crusader, the Dark Knight of Gotham City, true identity of the callow playboy and son of privileged Bruce Wayne, has around since May 1939 when he appeared in a brief story in Detective Comics issue number 27. And in that time, he has many iterations in the page of DC Comics magazines and elsewhere in television and movies. We also have campy Batmans and dark, moody Batmans, cheeky, dumb Batmans, childish Batmans, and serious grown-up Batmans. But the best Batman we've ever had, bar none, was the animated Batman, guys. And while I do not at present have the time or space to do full justice to the last greatest Batman, I would still like to share with you just briefly his story, guys. So, after the 1989 Tim Burton directed Batman feature, which was a masterpiece, became one of the biggest hits of the generation, it was no-brainer for Warner Brothers to continue that franchise, developing the character popular and beloved, now far beyond even the broadest scope of the comic reading audience. So what I mean by that is, perhaps startling is that one of these directions came with some of the staff of Warner afternoon cartoon series Tiny Toon Adventures, believe it or not, as well as Looney Tunes, released in 1990, that would later result in the magnificent Animaniacs. But all said, why not an animated Batman? And so it is that TTA animator Bruce Timm and background painter Eric Randamski, if I'm pronouncing that, took to developing a show unlike anything that have ever been seen on American animation, backed up by the producer Tom Ruegger. And there was also influences by the Tim Burton film and using the iconic Batman theme to sterling effect in the opening title sequence. So Batman's history throughout the first 50 years of his existence come with the result of the Batman animated series, formerly known simply as Batman, which ran for about 85 episodes. So I wish I could talk about the DCA forever and always, but with 14 years and 8 distant series to account for, this is simply not the place for it. So I'll start by talking instead. We shall home on a single early example of the form, in my opinion. The first feature produced starring the animated Batman back when he was still in his only inhabited young years. This was Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Initially planned to be the first direct video film in the franchise, but get this, guys, ultimately given an expanded budget and a small release in December of 1993. I was only 3 years old. It was produced after the initial run of 65 episodes that represent the animated Batman in its purest, darkest, most un-Robin form, and though it is mere 76-minute slip of a thing, it is among the boldest and most ambitious stories ever attempted in a franchise, and as acute and compelling, and this part is important if you're a fanboy, guys, satisfying Batman-y as any of the Batman features, if not more so, by which of course I mean fantastic. Mask of the Phantasm starts off pretty well by doing something that not nearly enough superhero movies bother to do. It assumes we know why we're watching it, not in the sense that it expects the viewer to have a working knowledge of the show. But in the year 1966, guys, Batman did the only knowledge that film requires, is that you know broad terms who the following people are. Bruce Wayne is Batman, Alfred is his butler, and the Joker is the Joker. And let's be honest, anyone who goes into a movie with Batman in the title and starts asking questions like, who is that white-faced man with green hair? He's like a clown but evil, I don't get it. Deserves exactly what they get, a slap in the face. Beyond that, the film is massively self-contained. The two most important characters in this movie, after Batman himself, are one-off inventions and presents a narrative conflict that begins and ends entirely with the span of the film's 76 minutes. It solves the problem of every origin story movie before or since in the only way it needs to be solved. By putting a famous superhero into a plot, guys, and watching him get out of it is revolutionary stuff. I mean, much more daring than e.g. two different origin stories for Spider-Man in the span of 10 years. And that's just self-contained. It's also quite possibly most solid, meaningful story of any Batman feature film, as well as being one of the best stories told in the DC comics. In brief, a new vigilante dressed like a Grim Reaper with a metal mask is killing some of Gotham's most prominent gangsters, and Batman, played by Kevin Conroy, is good in the role as any actor has ever been. Of course, he's a lot of practice in taking the blame, thanks to over-analyzed bat-hating city councilman Arthur Reeves. Shortly after the spree begins, a woman named Andrea Belmont, voiced by Dana Delany, returns to Gotham after 10 years away. She just so happens to be the ex-flame of certain Bruce Wayne and his long-lost love, and the current paramour of Arthur Reeves, and the daughter of the reclusive businessman Carl Belmont, who had some strange connection to the death of gangsters way back in its time when Bruce and Andrea were dating. So check this out. I didn't want to make the spoiler for you guys, but it's not really a spoiler. Let us not spoil the plot, but also mention that you don't need to be all that imaginative to figure out where this is going pretty much from the second it starts. Doesn't matter. If anything, it makes the whole thing that much deeper into the film, because being as well thus are ahead of Batman almost the whole time, guys, his actions in the movie become far more tragic and sympathetic and otherwise surprising about the film. What makes it so much stronger than most Batman vehicles is that a plot involving the Phantasm, who is not even named, and the story of a young Bruce and love aren't just complementary, they're effectively the same story. Mask of the Phantasm is about Bruce Wayne above all, and about how the new case he finds himself working on stirs up old memories. This is what makes the film big, guys. Enough to be a feature that, as a result of Bruce's young years, we are made privy to Batman's origin story. Wait, didn't I just say the movie wasn't an origin story? Well, it isn't. It is the story of how a man who loved and lost was broken by it. And while the flashbacks given us new insight into Bruce's character, this is not an origin story in any remotely tragical sense. The flashbacks themselves are more about character psychology than plot. One of the best and most harrowing sequences in the movie, and high in the running for one of my favorite moments in Conroy's performance of the character ever, is when younger Bruce kneels at his parents' grave, horrified that he feels happiness in his relationship with Andrea, and thus abandoning his promise to their memory. Then he would never stop suffering in order to bring justice to the world. Of being a flashback or not, is one of the best moments in expressing just how messed up Bruce is. Bruce's inner mind has become that, even portrayed as a medium, he's still tragically hurt, guys. The purpose of the Phantasm plot isn't simply to create a new villain for the hero to fight, but to trigger the set of events that cause a much older and more established Batman to revisit the way he felt at the moment, or the moment that he proposed to Andrea, or at the moment that she dumped him with a note. The film is an exploration of Bruce Wayne's lonely soul, not an action movie with some character psychology. incidentally spackled on it. This is a genius of the animated Batman as a peak. So that it should be so much more about character than incident. So officially in a format, I hasten to add, that was being sold almost entirely to children thanks to marketing pressure, though the adults who need to see the show were largely able to find it. So I suppose it's not a perfect film. The animation isn't quite up to the absolute best work in the show itself, but there was a production schedule like counts for that, with the character animation of Wile Arthur and an obvious low point, and perhaps it's simply the case that the limited animation of the show works better in a smaller chunk. Of course, the design remains the same, so-called dark deco and a fusion of 30s style film noir atmosphere. So I mean, you know, it's good. And the series' ingenious trick of drawing backgrounds on dark paper rather than light paper, giving everything more texture and gradations of black, has not been tampered with at all. But I'll confess to being a little put off by the overall farmed out Korean studio, feeling too much of the action in a way that doesn't happen all that often with the show and its hype. And there's also the rather calculating insertion of the Joker, Mark Hamill, whose take of the character is definitive as Conroy's Batman. Not in a way to feel forced. All things considered, it's amazing how easy he slides into the scenario, and then the brief flashbacks to pre-Joker. Joker does a fantastic job giving the character a history without telling us what the history actually is, and that's what I like about this film. But the mere fact that he's here smacks of somebody losing their nerve, all well and good to create a story totally independent of Batman's traditional rogue galleries, but just in case. But Thing is still a superlative Batman story told with style and flair and so much ambition, guys, than a cash-in movie made on the cheap out to have Tim and more expanded possibilities of the distribution and more death scenes, more complex action scenes, creating a movie that is exciting, as intelligent and fun, troubling superhero movie by turns. My final verdict for this film would be a 5 out of 5. This is the best Batman animated film in my honest opinion. Any Batman fan will agree with me or disagree with me, but in my opinion, this is a beautiful movie. It's a good movie for any Batman fan to check out. If you don't have this in your collection, go on Amazon.com or eBay. Probably sell it dirt cheap. I've seen it at Walmart on Blu-ray. So this has been another movie review for you guys. I'll have more non-related Batman movie reviews coming up soon. So until then, take care, guys. Cash out.
And be too careful with all those weirdos around.
A soaring new adventure. Batman, Mask of the Phantasm, the animated movie.